Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist congregation of Terre, Haute. This congregation welcomes all people, regardless of their age, religion, race, nationality, ability, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, or anything else that has been used to divide people. We are a group of people with our own opinions, our own ideas, our own dreams. But we share ideals. We share a common belief in a liberal religion. In our discussions, we may disagree with each other, but we must always remember that what unites us is stronger than what separates us. We must always end the service aware of the love that we have for each other. The first principle of being Unitarian Universalist is to recognize and respect the inherent worth and dignity of every person.
I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do. I shall take my voice wherever there are those who want to hear the melody of freedom, or the words that might inspire hope and courage in the face of despair and fear. My weapons are peaceful, for it is only by peace that peace can be attained. The song of freedom must prevail.
May I be light in you. May you be light in me. Into our hearts, into our souls, let love abide. May I be love in you. May you be love in me. From this place out to the world, for all time. Spirit of life, sources of all that ever was and can be, we are guided by all that is sacred within our own hearts and minds to pray this prayer and to live this prayer. We offer up this simple and profound hope that we may be light, give light, and receive light in all the places we call home and in this sacred space that reaches across miles and experiences. That we may be love, give love, and receive love out in the world. May we never forget the impact and power of our voices. May we never lose sight of the songs in our hearts. D. Blanchard reminds us that they can be heard as songs of love or of longing, songs of encouragement or of comfort, songs of struggle or of security and care. But most of all, they are the songs of life, giving testimony to what has been, giving praise for all we're given, giving hope for all we strive for, and giving voice to the great mystery that carries each of us in and out of this world. Today, we hear those songs in all the ways we are learning and growing as communities of faith, hope, and love. We hear them as little ones become young ones. We hear them as loved ones pass from this life and into the unknown. And we hear them in the streets and at our polling places as people of faith and conscience pave the way for a better world, a better understanding, deeper care and accountability. And we hear them in the silences, a deep awareness that there are those among us as yet unheard and unaccounted for. May we never, ever forget the impact and the power of our voices. May we never, ever lose sight of the songs in our hearts. May grace and mercy follow us wherever we may go, whatever we feel called to and toward in the days and weeks ahead. Amen. Ashe. And blessed be.
I was 13 years old when I became a Unitarian Universalist. I was raised in this faith, but I was 13 when I claimed it as my own. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I was waiting for my parents to finish their committee meetings after service. All the other kids had left, and I was bored. I wandered into the visitor's corner, and a little red wallet card caught my eye. It said in bold letters on the front, "What do Unitarian Universalists believe?" My 13-year-old self wondered, what do Unitarian Universalists believe? As I read the 10 statements written by the Reverend David O. Rankin, in my heart, in my soul, as I read those words, I said, yes, this is what I believe. One phrase in particular planted itself in me like the deepest truth, and I never forgot it. We believe in the motive force of love. It was in that moment when I knew that this was my religion. I start with this story to ground the work of You, the Vote in our theology, which is its foundation and its inspiration. This year marks the 250th anniversary of what we celebrate as the beginning of Universalism in the United States. It was on September 30th, 1770, that Universalist John Murray preached his first sermon on this continent. And the truth that I read in that little red wallet card, the truth I've never forgotten, is the message of Universalism. 250 years ago, in the context of religious notions of God rooted in punishment, damnation, and the division of humanity between worthy and unworthy, saved and damned, the idea of universal salvation, that God's love is unconditional, that no one is cast out, and that salvation is not individual but collective, was radical and liberating. Universalism proclaimed that humanity was bound together in a common destiny, and that love is the thread that binds each of us to the other and everyone to creation. Universalists believed that God is love. They also believed in hell. They just believed that it existed here and now on the earth. The great Universalist preacher Hosea Ballou was clear about how politicians and those in power used fear, stoked fear, to protect their greed and corruption and self-interest, and he knew the suffering that resulted from that. Rather than speak of theology in terms of speculative notions of God, Ballou spoke of it in terms of human experience here and now and our relationships to each other. A society that lives out the motive force of love would be one that fosters joy and liberation and thriving for all people. This is the highest calling of our faith as Unitarian Universalists, to live out, defend, and embrace this motive force of love in our lives, in our actions, in our commitments, and in our society. This is why You, the Vote says, vote love. Today, in our context, we are witnessing the emboldening and authorization of ideologies rooted not in love and interdependence, but in domination, authoritarianism, and dehumanization. And just to be clear, this is not new. It has a long and deadly history on this continent, going back more than 400 years. And yes, even our Universalist ancestors came from that same lineage of Christian European conquest and limited the vision of universalism only to white society, a limit that we are still trying to redeem ourselves from. It is dehumanization that creates systems that put children in cages, that deny health care to our transgender siblings, that allow police violence and the murder of Black people to continue unabated and without accountability. Dehumanization that allows triage protocols that devalue the lives of disabled people and that lead to systemic divestment from communities, the resources from housing to education, healthcare to jobs, and the criminalization of poverty. Just as Hosea Ballou named it, the tool of dehumanization, its propaganda, is fear. Propaganda that tells us to fear our neighbor, that we are not family and kin, but enemies. This is the exact opposite of our theology of universalism that tells us that we have a common destiny and we are connected to one another in love. This is why You, the Vote says vote love, defeat hate. And while the forces of dehumanization and domination have always been a part of U.S. history, so too have been those who have resisted and organized for the values of dignity, equity, humanity, and love. These days are heartbreaking, they're infuriating, and they're frightening. On days when I lose my own strength, I turn to the words of Alice Walker, who reminds us, We remember our ancestors because it is an easy thing to forget that we are not the first to suffer, rebel, fight, love, and die. The grace with which we embrace life in spite of the pain and the sorrow is always a measure of what has gone before us. We remember our ancestors, theological, familial, and in movement. We remember Francis, Ellen Watkins Harper, Hosea Ballou, John Brown, Sitting Bull, Ida B. Wells, Dr. King, Anne Braden, and so many more whose names history does not remember. Those who struggled and risked and fought and loved for the principles of justice, equity, liberty. This is why in You the Vote, we say vote love, we say defeat hate, because, dear ones, we are on a precipice. Every single one of our most deeply held values is on the line right now. The current powers in government are showing in everything they do that the inherent worth and dignity of so many immigrants, Black people, disabled folks, trans and queer people does not matter to them. Human agency, interdependence, the democratic process are being disrupted and defiled daily. It is a radical act of faith to not only continue to believe in all of our cherished principles, but to demand them by speaking out, taking risks, organizing, leveraging our resources, and building networks of solidarity and power to protect one another and these values. We are on a precipice, and our actions right now will affect whether we have a chance to continue to bring our bold values forward, to rebuild, expand, and strengthen our democracy, to confront police violence, to upend racial inequity, to change divestment from communities, and make moves to protect the climate. Now is the time to draw on the grace, the courage, and the strength of all those who went before, to widen our comfort zones, and to do all we can to vote love and defeat hate. If you haven't taken any form of action yet, sign up for a shift with You the Vote. I can tell you that it's fun. And if you've written postcards to voters, but you feel nervous about phone banking, do it with your fellow UUs. And if you've been all in with You the Vote from the beginning, keep it up and start planning for how you will show up and organize after November 3rd. Because democracy will not be restored in one election. It's been under systemic attack for decades, and justice will not roll down like waters in one election. Voting matters. It's absolutely critical, but it is not the end. It is just one piece of the long haul work of organizing for a future where all are free and where all can thrive. Will you show up in the streets, set up to contribute to a bail or legal assistance fund, open your church building to protesters needing refuge from state repression, tap into your own endowment or discretionary funds to make sure that grassroots organizers have the funds they need for their work? There is so much to do. And our faith calls us to love more radically, to give more generously, to believe more fervently that another world is possible, and be willing to be all in for that future. As you've heard me say many times before, this is no time for a casual faith, no time for a casual commitment to what you hold most dear. And this is no time to go it alone. Friends, we are in this work together. I invite you to be deeper in this work of You the Vote with us. May we remember that we are held by love always. May we remember that we are held by and with one another. And may we all together be all in today, tomorrow, next month, and next year for justice, for love, for democracy, and for a future that is free and thriving for all people. May it be so.
makes a bridge from heart to heart and hand to hand. Love finds a way when lies are blind and freedom banned. Love breaks the walls of language, gender, class, and age. Love gives us wings to slip the bars of every cage. Love lifts the hopes that force and fear have beaten down. Love breaks the chains and gives us strength to stand our ground. Love rings the bells of wanted birth and wedding day. Love guides the hands that promise more than words can say. Love makes a bridge that winds may shake yet not destroy. Love carries faith through life and death to endless joy.
Responsive reading 592, The Free Mind. I call that mind free which masters the senses and which recognizes its own reality and greatness, which passes life not in asking what it shall eat or drink, but in hungering, thirsting, and seeking after righteousness. I call that mind free, which jealously guards its intellectual rights and powers, which does not content itself with a passive or hereditary faith, which opens itself to light whencesoever it may come, which receives new truth as an angel from heaven. I call that mind free which is not passively framed by outward circumstances and is not the creature of accidental impulse, which discovers everywhere the radiant signatures of the infinite Spirit, and in them finds help to its own spiritual enlargement. I call that mind free which protects itself against the usurpations of society, and which does not cower to human opinion, which refuses to be the slave or tool of the many or of the few, and guards its empire over itself as nobler than the empire of the world. I call that mind free which resists the bondage of habit, which does not mechanically copy the past, nor live in its old virtues, but which listens for new and higher monitions of conscience, and rejoices to pour itself forth in fresh and higher exertions. I call that mind free which sets no bounds to its love, which, wherever they are seen, delights in virtue and sympathizes with suffering, which recognizes in all human beings the image of God and the rights of God's children, and offers itself up a willing sacrifice to the cause of humankind. I call that mind free which has cast off all fear but that of wrongdoing, and which no menace or peril can enthrall, which is calm in the midst of tumults and possesses itself, though all else be lost. William Ellery Channing.